Hello and welcome to Module 1, Lesson 2, Part 2 of Engage New York for Mrs. Richards' class. Yesterday we multiplied numbers in exponential form, and today our focus is going to be on dividing numbers in exponential form. So we're going to start on page 7 today, and we're going to start in the middle. Mine has a little box around this middle part that says the in general. Yours may not. Just note that it's the same thing, different copies. So what we're going to start with actually is going to be an example, and we're going to put it in right here so that I can explain using numbers. So the example I want you to put is 5 to the 5th power over 5 to the 2nd power. And I want you to remember that 5 to the 5th power really means 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 multiplied 5 times. And 5 to the 2nd on the bottom is just 5 times 5. Well, depending on how you learned fractions, you will note that if there's the same numerator and denominator, you can cancel them out. So we can actually cancel out this set of 5s and cancel out this set of 5s, and we're left then with 3 5s, which is 5 to the 3rd power. Something to note is that there's a shortcut here. This is the work to be done out, but really by looking at the exponents, the shortcut is if they're in a fraction and the base is the same, you could have just subtracted 5 minus 2 to get 3, and the answer would have been 5 to the 3rd power. That's really what they're trying to tell you here as well, only using letters. But it's a little easier for most students to understand if we use numbers. So if you slide down to exercise 21, the same thing applies. 7 to the 9th over 7 to the 6th. Well, the base is 7 in both accounts. And since that's the case and it's in a fraction, we're going to subtract. 9 minus 6 is 7 to the 3rd power. Something I try and tell my students is if it's a fraction, we use subtraction when it comes to exponents. So it's sometimes easier to remember that. Same holds true for negative numbers. Negative 5, we're just going to keep that base of negative 5 and subtract the exponent. 16 minus 7 is going to give us 9. Okay? Exercise 23, the only difference is now you have a fraction on the top and the bottom as the base. Same thing, just keep the fraction in parentheses, 8 fifths, and subtract the exponents to the 7th power. Now, the last one, exercise 24, seems as if it's obvious, right? 13 is the same base, so we'll keep it. And 5 minus 4 gives us 1, which is technically a correct answer, but if you get a multiple choice, that's not what you're going to see. It's really just 13. Anything to the 1 power is itself. So normally we don't write to the 1 power. We write it just as itself. On the next page then, which would be page 8, we are going to focus in then on exercise 26. We're going to skip exercise 25 for now for the sake of the video. And I would like you to add an example here, but first we're going to talk about what happens when it's an x instead. So x to the 5th over x to the 4th, we're going to keep our base of x. And yes, 5 minus 4 is still 1. But again, with the letter, we're not going to write x to the 1. We're just simply going to leave it as x. Now, something that I want to make sure we address here is 5 to the 4th over 5 to the 4th. Okay, so yeah, we're going to keep our base of 5, and 4 minus 4 is obviously 0. But this is not really the answer that we're looking for. If you type that in your calculator, 5 caret 0, you'll find out that that actually equals 1. And the same goes true if you were to do 100 caret 0. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of do that here. 100 caret 0. If you type that in your calculator, you'll also get 1. And the reason is, anytime that you have the same numerator and denominator, like for example, if I had said, oh, what's 2 over 2? Same numerator and denominator is really 1. And that's what's happening here, only it's exponents. What you really have here is 625 over 625, which means it's 1. So we don't write to the 0 power. We want that to be 1. So anything to the 0 power is 1, and you might want to write yourself a note to remember that so that you have it for future reference. Again, for the sake of the video, we are going to skip exercise 27 through 30, and we're going to go to the next page, which would be page 9. And on page 9, we're going to do exercise 31. And this is really where some of the stuff gets a little more difficult, and there's a few more steps. But I do believe that we can get them down and show them out. So what happens when you have a fraction times, there's an invisible time sign there, a non-fraction? Well, the easiest way to deal with that is to make the one that's not a fraction into a fraction by putting a 1 underneath it. And so I'm going to rewrite that for us a second. This is really 5 over x to the third times 3x to the 8th over 1. And if you remember the rules about multiplying fractions, what you really do when you multiply fractions is you times the top by the top. Okay, so I'm going to do 5 times 3 and get 15. X to the 8th goes on the end of that. And then you times the bottom by the bottom. So x to the third times 1 is 1x to the third. And I'm including the 1 in there so that when I simplify it, I can use it. And then the last thing to do is to simplify this separately. So the first thing you simplify is 15 divided by 1. So you want to divide that or simplify it, and that is 15. And then you want to simplify this section, x to the 8th over x to the third. Well, we just learned fraction subtraction, so we are going to subtract exponents here. So 8 minus 3 is 5. This is 15x to the 5th power. Okay, so let's try again. For the sake of the video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip down to part C, and then on your own time, you can go back and do part B. But let's talk about what we do here one more time. So for part C, we have 5 over x to the third times 11x to the fourth. So the first thing, again, what we want to do is make that a fraction by putting a 1 underneath. Then we want to rewrite it. 5 over x to the third power times 11x to the fourth over 1. Then we will multiply the top number by the top number, the numerator by the numerator. So 5 times 11 is 55. X to the fourth has to go on there as well. And then the bottom times the bottom, x to the third times 1 is, again, 1x to the third power. And then we split it. The base numbers, 55 divided by 1 is 55. And then for our exponents, fraction subtraction, we want to do 4 minus 3. So we get x to the 1 power, but we just learned a second ago that we don't usually write that. So our final answer is just 55x. And we're good. And that is really the basics of the second half of the lesson. It's a shorter one today. So if you are in my class, the homework assignment that goes with this is called Lesson 2 Practice. It looks like this. Lesson 2 Practice. And it's going to be a combination of your multiplication of exponentials and division of exponential numbers. So we want to know how to do both of those. And you can find it in the link below. Thank you for watching today, and have a great day.